Many people are already riding the EV bandwagon. Switching to electric cars has been considered the ultimate solution for environmental conservation, but how true is this? How green are electric cars? Let's start by clearing up one of the biggest myths. Electric cars are referred to as zero-emission cars because they do not have exhaust systems that release smoke as you drive along the road. But that is not where it ends here. Don't be fooled. The source of energy that moves your trip, yes, that's where the real story lies, and it's not as clean as you might think. Take the case of the UK, for example. Even today, about 40% of their country's electricity comes from fossil fuels. Coal, natural gas, you name it. So, while you may be reducing your direct emissions through use of an EV, the electrical power grid charging your vehicle is still emitting a lot of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. The pollution is just somewhere else. It does not occur right in one's front yard or right in front of one's eyes at some distant power plant. The only way you can say EVs don't harm the environment and get away with it is by arguing that you don't have to deal with the consequences. Out of sight, out of mind, right? And here's something even more eyebrow-raising. 10.6% of the UK's electricity comes from burning wood chips. That's right, wood chips. But where did these come from exactly? Well, obviously from trees, but these are not the local trees. It is the trees that are cut in the US and transported to other parts of the world where it is then burned to produce energy. Thus, while you are green with your EV, you have a forest somewhere across the Atlantic for your car to keep running. In that case, whether you are charging your electric car on a dirty grid, can you really claim to be making such a significant dent in the environmental battle? You are cleaning the pollution only to take it further away out of our conscious vision. Now, let's talk about our batteries. These aren't your run-of-the-mill AA Duracells where you just power your remote with them, and that is not the end of it. Not those batteries, no. We're talking about giant lithium-ion bricks that fuel your Tesla, your Nissan Leaf, or your latest-gen Prius Prime. They are perhaps one of the pillars of the electric car industry, but these also have another side that isn't exactly positive. We have to manufacture these batteries with metals such as lithium, cobalt, and nickel. Getting those elements is not really a piece of cake. What's more, it ends up being an environmental nightmare. It is very expensive in terms of energy, it is invasive and detrimental to biochemical solutions, and thirdly, it pollutes the environment. But that is not the end of it. Most of this mining happens in countries whose standards of labor are less than desirable, and there are some severe issues with the supply chain. For instance, cobalt is mined in such countries as the Democratic Republic of Congo and involves child labor. That is why when you connect your car to a socket to charge it, you may be charging not just your electric vehicle, but part of it was charged by someone at the expense of their childhood. And then we have the manufacturing process. The creation of an electric car is estimated to release 40% more carbon than the production of a standard petrol or diesel car, all due to these monstrous batteries. Let's take the Volvo Polestar 2 case, for instance. In comparison with its diesel counterpart, Volvo XC40, the electric version would have emitted an additional 10 tons of CO2 by the time it is put on the roads. That is like using a normal car for several years before the EV starts to repay the damages it has done to the environment in its first few years. In fact, the electric Volvo Polestar 2 would need to be driven for almost 50,000 kilometers to be able to offer any form of environmental benefits over the diesel car. And here's where things get tricky. A lot of people who own these EVs do not even use them frequently. The problem is that many EV rental agreements don't allow the car to amass that kind of mileage before one returns the car. Hence, in some instances, that brand new green electric car may be substituted before it even contributes to reducing emissions to the environment. Well, you know, there is always recycling. Well, we cannot recycle these batteries since they are non-rechargeable batteries. Why can they not be recycled? Well, not so fast. Lithium-ion battery recycling is a process that involves high costs and great complexity, as well as a long cycle of operations. Currently, reusing these batteries is still a challenge since there is a limited advancement in recycling technology and many parts cannot be recycled. As of now, only a small percentage of lithium-ion batteries is recycled outrightly, with the majority of them dumped into landfills where their chemicals can leach out into the environment. But what would happen to such batteries after their lifetime is another issue that is worth being discussed. Throwing them in a recycling bin and crossing our fingers isn't exactly what needs to be done in order to recycle them. If we intend not to cause a future disaster that is likely to affect the environment, there's a need to create proper methods for battery disposal and recycling. However, it is for this reason that until today, the ideal of a completely circular 100% recyclable electric car still seems to be a pipe dream. There's also another effect of electric cars that most people don't know today: excess weight. All those batteries make the EVs much heavier than gasoline-powered vehicles by a very large margin. And the extra weight has consequences. Heavier vehicles demand more reparations on the roads and more usage of equipment in the construction, hence producing more heat physically and environmentally. But the weight does not only affect the roads, they also get used up faster due to the increase in the overall weight of today's cars. And those small particles of rubber and the components of tires that come with the product, they find their way onto the air we breathe, the water we drink, and even the food we take. So, while all our interests are pinned on the reduction of CO2 emissions, the world is also experiencing a tire pollution problem, and electric cars with heavy batteries only contribute to the problem. Thus, are electric cars more environmentally friendly than traditional ones? Yes, they can be, in ideal situations. Take Norway, for instance. Some of the electricity they use is generated from renewable sources, particularly hydroelectric sources, which contribute about 98.5% of its power. Over there, an electric car only needs to be driven 8,400 miles to start beating a petrol car in terms of emissions, which, if you live in China or Poland, where most of the grid is built on coal, would take nearly 80,000 miles before your EV is finally saving the Earth. Well, you can imagine that is like making a 3-round trip around the globe, isn't it? All of us won't be clocking those kinds of mileage in the near future. Thus, although electric cars do present lower direct emissions as compared to emissions of traditional gasoline and diesel automobiles, they are far from the magic bullet solution to our environmental problems. Electric cars are not the ultimate solution that people have sought. It is only one part of many. That is why, if we are to take climate seriously, we need to aim higher. This is not enough if we are to solely depend on the use of EVs as a way of achieving the emission reduction goals. Electric cars are somewhat of a solution, but we cannot celebrate yet, and it is not a foolproof solution for our problem. The dream of the green revolution is going to take much more than changing the fuel tank to a battery. That means changing the way we view transport and energy, as well as thinking about the environment in its broadest sense. Therefore, before you join the bandwagon through the purchase of the current hyped electric cars, remember that it's not the car you drive, it's about the environment we inhabit, the resources we use, and how we, in turn, build the environment and frame a sustainable future.